We're just going to wait for Angela to get here and then we'll start because I don't see her in the audience. She's parking? Perfect. Okay. The handout that Andrew has is from Bayou Title. I've invited them to be at today's meeting. And so this is kind of the step-by-step process that they'll be taking you all through. And it's just on paper so that you all can see all of the different steps, and it's easy to know exactly what's heading your way. Any update on Angela? Anybody got that? Because what I could probably do is start with Mr. There she is. All right, Angela, good morning.
Good morning, and I know y'all not talking about somebody being late. Okay.
We're not. All right,
Oh.
hang on. Let me just start us off real quick. Good morning, everyone. This is the Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. We're joined by Council President Morrell. I'm present. CAO Montano is here. We've got the Law Department here along with Mr. Threat. And we also have Brett Lalibert with Bayou Title here to answer questions as well. Angela, just some housekeeping. We just passed out a one pager put together by Bayou Title, just so that everyone understands kind of the steps they'll be taking everyone through, just a kind of quick, update from them. Mr. Lalibert is present here for any questions, or, we can also have him just run down this sheet if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Lalibert, why don't you come on down here? Thank you so much for being with us and being so accessible.
Some people from TCA are also walking in too, so I want to make sure that we give them a chance.
Okay. Good morning to you, sir. And thank you for providing us this little one pager. It makes it a lot easier for all of us to understand exactly what's going to happen next. So if you could just walk us through the one pager that you put together for us, and then we'll take any questions if there happen to be any.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here. As mentioned, my name is Brent Laliberty. And what I wanted to do for all the residents is just let them have a quick understanding as to how the process will go. Obviously, I was here about 3 months ago, and I know the process has been altered a little bit as y'all been getting the houses appraised and such. So assuming that the appraisals have occurred and the residents are fine with the prices being offered, the city is going to submit an offer and be accepted, and that's where we're going to get involved. What we've done to date, as that process has developed, as we prepared an agreement to purchase that we presented to both the property owners and the city for execution. So we do have 3 of those done. Once we have that in place, then what we're going to do is begin working with the file. As I mentioned last time I was here, I think we've only been officially engaged in 3 properties, but we've already completed the title work on all the properties. So
Right.
Once we have a file in place, ready to move forward, what we're going to need to do is communicate with the property owners, because what we have is just what is of record with the land records. We don't know at this point whether someone is deceased or whether successions have been done, that kind of thing. So we would have to open the file, communicate with the sellers, find out, we can let them know who we show as being the owners of record, and they can let us know whether that contradicts anything else. And then so as we go through that process, we'll identify additional names, and we will update our title work to include those names and to make sure we have everything captured. Obviously with that, well, I say obviously, a lot of people may not know this, but when we run our records, everything is name based. So aside from the fact that, there may be specific mortgages on properties, such items as judgments, liens, tax liens, bond forfeitures, things of that nature, those are indexed by the name. So it becomes critical for us to have all the names and have all the distinguishing information, because there's no doubt that we're going to pull up some of those items as we go. And then it's our job to determine whether or not they apply. So that's why we're going to need to get information from the property owners, update our title work, and then go through the process of identifying which items, if any, apply. From there, what we're going to do is obtain payoffs on mortgages. I know based on the title work that we had done, there's a lot of properties that do have mortgages, but not all of them do. Based upon the names that we've run thus far, for the most part, the titles are a lot cleaner than probably most of the properties I deal with. So unless something else comes up with additional names being run, or the fact that 3 months have passed and maybe something else may appear, we don't expect them to be too complicated. Once we get to that point, we're going to try to identify what a closing date is. And the reason we need to kind of identify that in advance is there may be some items, there will be some time sensitive items on there. Payoffs are only good for a certain point in time. Any items that may be prorated or such maybe are only good for a certain amount of time. So once we figure out what the closing is going to be, we will prepare all the documents pursuant to that, share it with all the parties for them to review. And then once everyone is comfortable, then we would begin the process of circulating the closing documents for everyone to review in advance. We would make the request of Liberty Bank for them to transfer the money for that each particular file from the account that's currently held for the city of New Orleans. They would just transfer that over to our escrow account on a file by file basis because we do have an account with them as well. And then once we get the closing set, we can do this in as many parts or as many locations as necessary. We have offices all over the state. We have an office in Mississippi. So wherever it needs to be, we can via power of attorney, whatever it may be. But the point I wanted to make on that last bullet point was that we're not going to be able to make any disbursements until we have all the signatures. So sometimes, we have closings that may occur in 4 or 5 parts, but whoever signs first, second, third, and fourth, their money won't be available until all of the necessary signatures have been obtained. So that's just a quick rundown on how the process would occur.
Thank you. And that's consistent with what we've been discussing as well. So I appreciate that. Any questions?
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Brent. And I want to thank you again for your presentation during the last go around. That's helped us to loop back and just identify if there's some things about the process that the residents could be proactive about. So just got a few quick questions for you this morning. As it relates to identifying the closing in advance, you were talking about that happening prior to the circulation of the closing documents. And so could you just say a little bit more about that? Only because we know that one of the things that the residents have requested is to be able to look through the closing documents so that they could have time to read them and process them. And so could you just talk through that a little bit more?
Yes, ma'am. What we had done early on in the process was provide to the city a generic draft of what each document would look like. So those are available from that, and I'll be glad to share them again. As it relates to the specifics of each property, as I mentioned, the reason why we'd want to get a date set is there will definitely be some mortgages I don't want to present a settlement statement that says, property owner X is going to get $100,000, and then it may be $500 less than that because the interest continues to accrue until we pay it off. So that's why there's some specificity that needs to be in place in order to know.
Can you repeat that last part? The people, the community behind could not hear you.
Okay.
If you could talk into the microphone.
Yeah, as it relates to a mortgage, obviously any payoff we get on a mortgage is going to be a payoff good through a specific date, and then what they call a per diem, which is a daily additional day of interest cost for each day thereafter. So if we prepare the documents and think it's going to close on the 1st, but then for whatever reason we can't disperse until the 10th because everyone hasn't signed or because we couldn't get the closing to set, then I'd have to adjust the settlement statement accordingly. And then I don't want anyone to think that we're changing the numbers. I mean, obviously we don't control, when everyone signs, but once everyone does sign, either that day or by the next day, we're going to submit the payoff. But until, once we get a payoff and until we close and until we pay it off, each day is going to be a higher amount because of accrued interest.
Yeah. Yeah. So 2 follow-up questions to that. Thank you. And we're just going to keep going for clarification, and it's going to help.
Sure.
So you indicated a couple of times you need all of the signatures. Can you name what signatures you're predicting you're going to need?
Anyone who is owner of record, when we do our title search and we've done the commitment, so I can tell you with exactness right now, who owns each individual property based upon what is in the land records. What I don't know yet, and I'm suspecting that somewhere along the way, there may be someone who's deceased and there may have been succession that was done, or maybe one that needs to be done. So
you're just talking about people who would be considered owners
yes,
of the
ma'am,
property.
the owners, and then also on the city's side as well.
Okay, so let's go back to that. So we're hearing you say closing date is needed, circulation of the closing documents. Clearly, those documents would need to be attended to prior to the closing date or by the time the closing date comes when you're at the table together.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you were talking about the transfer of funds. So this is the part, Mr. Brent, that we have still, and we're grateful for CAO Montano and the rest of the folks from the city here, Mr. Threat and representatives, is we still have not received a clear answer as to the turnaround time that's involved in that process. So for example, if residents said, here's said closing date, we'd like to proceed forward with that. We're still trying to understand what's the turnaround time on the city side, because we heard Mr. Brent say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that at a certain point in time, money's going to be transferred over into the account that they have that's at the same bank. We're still trying to get clarity about what the turnaround time is, so that when residents are going for it and they're declaring a closing date, that they are certain that by the time they get to that date, money has been taken care of through all those signatures, buttons being pushed, all those things you talked about meeting before last.
From recollection, and I know we've addressed this, I believe it's 3 days prior to a Tuesday or Thursday check run. So 3 days prior to it, we run our checks Tuesdays and Thursdays. So 3 days prior, depending on where it falls in the calendar, to that Tuesday or Thursday check run. As far as the signatures, it'll be either the mayor or myself signing on behalf of the city.
So stop there. So signatures, you're saying an actual signature is going to either be needed from you or the mayor to proceed forward with that?
As I understand from the law department, yes.
Okay, so then where did Norman White come into this? Because I thought Norman White was the person.
He is the transactional person that moves the funds.
Okay, so Norman White has to transfer funds to make it accessible for the funds to be transferred over to Bayou Title.
Our signatures would come first, and then he'd make that transfer. Yes.
Okay, so your signatures are needed prior to Norman White taking action.
Correct.
Okay. So because we're hearing it's you or the mayor, is it fair to say that you are going to be making these signatures?
I don't know if it'd be fair, but more than likely, I think because of schedule and accommodation.
And that's why we're asking the question, because we don't want schedule or accommodation to interrupt this process at all. And from the administration, you've been the only person who's been responsive regarding these kinds of things. So we would like to ensure that you are going to be able to sign these documents for this money to go forward. And we need some kind of guarantees here, because we haven't, without those things, it's not been peace in the kingdom. There's no peace now.
Yeah, it's something we've discussed it internally, and I believe the mayor does intend on signing some of the early on ones with a time schedule, and then I will thereafter take over as far as some of the signatures through some sort of cadence. But I want to double verify with her and the law department thereafter. But it has been internally discussed to make this as expeditious as possible.
Okay, so then we understand that there's still some loose ends that are going to need to be tied up. So between now and this next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, we would like confirmation from you that if you're able to be responsible for this, then we can ensure that as the process is moving forward to up to 67 properties, that we can get signatures when we need them. And we in no way, shape, or form are trying to make this extra complicated. We're trying to make this as smooth as possible. And we need somebody who's going to be paying attention and diligent about this. And so you're at these meetings and we're asking for your support on this. Can I get a verbal yes, sir?
It's like a deposition. Yes,
thank
we
you.
will make this as expeditious as possible and align it up.
Okay.
Yeah, and Angela, like, if I could, you
Yeah.
know, I'm kind of the liaison for all the moving documents. So if you could, Bert, whenever it's a title transfer, if you could just CC me on the email, and then I'll make sure it works through City Hall.
Thank you. I appreciate this collective accountability. Couple more things, Mr. Brent. So with this being said, a couple just little nuances here. When it comes to, and forgive me if you already know this, I'm gonna just count this as a recap because I want to just not take anything for granted. In the meetings since the last one that you've attended, the residents have put forth a request for the city to ensure that they are not being prohibited from accessing their funds when it comes to any of those kind of predatory fees that have been attached to taxes in the past, et cetera. And so Mr. Threat is working to ensure that there's documentation verifying where those fees have been waived coming from the city. And so what we have requested is that the city of New Orleans provide two things. One, a copy of that certifying that those fees have been waived to the residents, but that they also forward you a copy in advance. That way you're not stuck at the table talking to people about stuff you may or may not know about. What we have found is Mr. Threat supported the process by requesting an updated copy of people's tax fees. And so when we got an updated copy, we realized the majority, as you have found also with deeds and such, that people have been paying their bills, okay? So there's only a handful of people that pertains to, and what has been talked over and over and over again, over 6 months to a year now, is making sure that if residents come to the table and they have an outstanding deed or they have taxes or something that they need to pay, that they would be provided more than one check if necessary. If they're totally clear, they're getting a check for what's due to them and they're done. If they have an outstanding deed or something that needs to be paid, that they would receive a check to pay those, pay that, and that they would receive a check for the difference. And I just wanted to see if that's been communicated to you or if that needs to be communicated now because we have all people in the room, but we want to make sure that there's no problem with that process either.
What I can comment to that is I was with you most of the way. Then at the end, when you said that once we identify what those items are, that we would give a check for that for someone to pay, and that's not going to happen.
Okay.
Because we're transferring title, we have to guarantee that we're transferring it free and clear
Mhm.
of what any of those items would be. So I think we're all going to be on the same page. We're going to need to know what that item is, what the payoff is. We're all satisfied that it's in writing. And then from that point, it's my job to make sure that I remit it to whoever it's owed to.
Okay, so what?
Let me finish.
Uh-huh.
And as a byproduct of that, what we're going to be giving the homeowners at that time is their proceeds.
Okay, so what let me
Let me just finish. So, you know, the thing is, you know, we're the ones who guarantee title. So we cannot rely upon anything that's not in writing, and that isn't, within a specific time frame. And because we're guaranteeing to the city that they're going to have good titles of the property. Now, if it turns out if the city were to give me something saying that taxes were X and it ended up being X plus whatever, then I think that's going to be their exposure. It wouldn't affect me. It wouldn't be affecting the property owners.
So
But we deal in absolutes. We want to know absolutely what's owed, and we pay that, and then we give. And your clients, who you represent, would be receiving their checks at closing.
Okay, what I was going to say to you, Mr. Brent, if you don't mind, could you repeat it one more time? Because they can't hear you in the back.
I apologize. I'm trying to not turn my back to you, but anyway,
Thank you.
as a title company, our job is to make sure that we transfer property free and clear, either free and clear of everything that we've identified as an item that affects the property, or we take exception to it. And I don't believe the city wants us to take exception to any of those things. So we need to make sure that once we identify whether they're judgments, taxes, whatever it may be, our underwriters require us to have payoffs in writing. So, that's why one of the purposes of trying to circulate the settlement statement in advance is so that each party because we anticipate a number of these properties are going to have more than one owner, right? So we will communicate as the gross sale, whatever the deductions may be for payoffs, and that's going to leave us with a sum of money. And then from that, we'll identify how much each property owner is going to receive. So as it relates to the property owner, once they get that document and they're satisfied with it and they come to closing and they sign, there's no other numbers to change. But what we can't allow is someone to say, well, give me the check for the SBA and I'll go pay it off. Give me the check for taxes due and I'll go pay it off. If the city gives me a payoff, look, I can get a payoff from online for the city taxes, but a lot of times it may include other items. If it turns out that the city is willing or has the ability to waive some of those items, that's not going to be something that shows up on the report that I can generate online. But whatever department of the city that's responsible for doing that, if they give me that in writing, then that's what I'm going to show as a deduction on the settlement statement. And then that's what I'm going to remit to the city. So see, once again, in a lot of situations, if the city were to give me a number and the number would change, I'm going to have a little bit of exposure. But in this case here, if I'm getting that payoff from the city, and the city is the one that's taken title to the property, well, then the exposure is going to throw back on them.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that basically you will be responsible for paying off the deed. So that's fine. What I would like to request to make this as easy as possible, because one of the things that we have really requested on the resident side is that we are going through this process in a way that minimizes any unnecessary mental, emotional, or physical burden on them. So one thing that could easily resolve this is at the point at which, and I think we're getting there now, at the point at which we have clear indication in terms of what fees are being waived in terms of those predatory fees when it comes to the taxes, that's a thing. If you could then, because I'm sure you have the most recent copy of what you have on record, is to be able to indicate to residents according to their names, if you have something on their record. The last time you were here, you held up a document and we could see that you had people you had already identified. It looked like there weren't that many, but for those that it pertains to is. So what is the cleanest way that you can go about sharing that information with people in advance? And I just want to give you the why really quickly. We understand that if a person gets an offer letter today and they were to accept the offer letter today and set a date for closing in advance, it would put them in a very precarious situation if they discover after setting the closing date that they owe somebody or there's something on the record that they weren't expecting. Final thing in regards to that, we understand too that there are people who've had outstanding deeds and have paid them, but folks don't always be pushing paperwork the way they need to, and we want to make sure that those things are cleaned up. So we don't want to wait until checks are made out to find out that they are not the amounts that people are expecting. So how could you support that process?
Yes, that's the purpose of the handout today. I think once the property owners are willing to accept whatever the appraised value is that the city would be offering, that's when I'm going to get back engaged. And at that point, the first thing we would do is reach out to all the individuals and find out, the social security number, dates of birth, marital status, that type of thing. Immediately after we did that, what we would then do is update title based upon, which would be a very easy process because we've already done the lion's share of the work. We're just updating the names of record to the current index date. Plus, we'd be adding any additional names that we weren't otherwise privy to. Assuming that everyone else who's on title is alive, around, and able to sign, that process can be very easy. I mean, I can tell you very quickly after I have the information, probably within a matter of a couple of days, what judgments, liens, tax liens we've identified, which ones we've distinguished, and to the extent that none of them apply, well, then that's great. To the extent that some do apply, then we'd have to reach out and find out what a payoff is. And to your point, if it turns out that some of the property owners have already paid that account out, but it just remains open, then we would request a release from that creditor. So we're going to do all the legwork. We're going to do all that. But we can communicate as early as possible, but none of that gets triggered until there's an offer in place.
You're correct.
Where we can reach out to someone and say, let me know your information, your husband, your wife, whatever his information, and then we'll update our records, and then we can communicate very, very, very well from that.
Yes, thank you for that. Mr. Threat, you were going to say something?
Oh, I was gonna say like the penalty interest and those type of fees are gonna be moving targets
Mhm.
as we go down the road.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to keep pulling this treasury report. I think on the penalties is about $4,500. Most of the properties are clean, anything from 3 cents to $150. So I think that if I can get talk to Norman White about getting a waiver for the penalties, that might be the first step that I can get you a letter for that, Brett.
Yes,
And then,
I
on
would
a-
prefer something that applies to each file.
Right,
particular-
exactly.
yeah.
And I've got each
Right.
file, so it'll be
Right.
individually
Right.
set up. But I'd like to get a meeting with you and Norman White to talk
Sure.
through the other mechanics.
Yep.
Dealing with that.
And Mr.
And
Thread, if we could
Angela,
just,
if I could just add, I mean, what I would anticipate, as Mr. Threat just said, I mean, we're going to have all these, I mean, I'm going to have mortgage payoffs. I may have a judgment payoff. I'm going to have something from the city. So when we circulate the documents for everyone's review and approval, I will make sure that we attach all the payoffs to that as well. So any property owner can identify exactly where the number is coming from, that there's nothing being pulled out of midair.
yes, this, Mr. Thread, if I can loop back to the last meeting and connect that to what Mr. Brent just said, this is actually what we're asking for proactively prior to the residents being able to say, oh, let's call and verify. They need to know where their dollars and cents fall. I want everybody to know that this is for the purpose of making this process. I keep emphasizing this because when people acknowledge that the residents know what they need, the process continues to move forward more smoothly. What we're saying, and Mr. Montano, I want to really make sure that you hear this, because I know there's always got to be conversations amongst you all with Mr. Threat and the administration, is that one, residents of Gordon Plaza have still not yet seen offer letters, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Number two, they need to see offer letters to know dollar amounts to indicate if it is even safe for them to accept an offer. You understand what I'm saying? Because in their minds, if they're like, yeah, I'm counting for, I know I got this deed, I know it has to be paid. It's not a problem in my mind, but I need, and these are in the words of the residents, to be able to see what it is I am being offered, to know that if I move forward with this, I'm not going to end up displaced or unable to purchase my next healthy home of choice. And I say next because this one is not healthy. They put great emphasis on that. So I'm going to pause for a second because I want to say something here. And I'm also being very mindful of time because we all want to be done by 10 too, but this is a critical piece. Mr. Brent, you were about to say something else?
Yeah, I would just say part of the agreement being made by the property owners once they sign the offer letter and subsequent to that, the agreement to purchase is that they have to deliver clear and merchantable title. So obviously, to the extent that what was owed exceeds what the offer is, then at that point, the property owner couldn't deliver. So they wouldn't be held obligated because they couldn't deliver clear and merchantable title. As I've mentioned, we have title commitments on every property. So I would have no problem sharing that with any property owner that wants to know what their title of record was at a certain point in time. But once again, that's not going to be as specific because it may state that, one of the owners made a mortgage 20 years ago and it's going to show a number, but then the payoff's going to be a much lower number. So to the extent that then it helps them understand the process, I have no problem sharing that. It's going to make more sense in terms of what the actual dollars they will be receiving are once we know what all the payoffs and deductions may be.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that because we're saying yes to both of those things. We'd love to send you a communication from the residents who'd like to request that. And then we can have that in advance. That'll help us on the front end and on the back end because we do understand, and we're noting that you said that we agree with you. We understand that by the time it comes, there may be some dollars and cents that need to be more precise.
The only caveat is I'd want to make sure once we share that the property owners also, look up top to see who we're showing the owners of record are.
Yes.
Because to the extent that they know there's, some different parties, maybe someone passed away and the succession wasn't done, that it's all predicated on what is a record in the courthouse as of that point. So to the extent that, we have 3 people listed, but someone's passed away and there may be 5 children, then all that's
Yes.
changed.
And thank you for that as well. Now you can even see more so. I hope everyone can see more so why that you sharing that in advance is important, because we have people who have gone through succession, have their documentations, and it would be really to everyone's advantage for them to make sure that those documents match. Yes. Okay. So with that being said, we also understand, and thank you for the folks from TCA who are in here. I just want to name Mr. Threat. We won't take up unnecessary time talking about things that have already been done transactionally. However, there are a couple of drafts that were another draft that was sent over that we would like to have the residents have a chance to look at so that we could communicate to you any inquiry. One thing to the folks from TCA, and good morning to you, that was indicated in the last meeting while you all were traveling, was that we wanted to just make sure, and we're going to look through the document that you sent over most recently, Ms. French, to make sure that if there are any questions just around some of the procedural part, that we can surface them to you in advance. One of the things that was indicated, the residents just wanted to make sure, was that even though there are certain processes or compliance that has to take place, that there are not being held to the same standard as folks who might have to bring proof of income and those kinds of things. There's some, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll loop back with you on that. So the big issue of the day, Mr. Montano, is that we came here last week. All the task force members who have been faithful to come into these meetings, the residents, and indicated that it was brought to the residents' attention that on March 15th, their appraisals from the appraiser that they selected were submitted well in advance of the deadline, which is not until April 23rd. We came to the last Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. The attorneys came forward, said it should not be a problem to share that information. No one asked for that information to be just shared randomly. The residents asked for their appraisal and their offer letter to be sent to them. Everybody left the room saying like it should be no big deal. So we need to know where the offer letters are, and the residents would like them today.
Here's what I can speak to on that. It's not completely in my realm. This is very much in the law department along with Shear's realm. As I understand, I've not seen the appraisals myself personally. I understand that the law department, in conjunction with the contract law agency, Shear Gardner, is evaluating the methodologies to ensure that fair market value is provided. And that is currently underway. I had correspondence with Denisha, the city attorney, this morning. That is what I can report out. I would defer to the law department to go into any more details, but from a procedural standpoint, I don't have the appraisals. They are within the law department in that process, and any insight into that, I will defer to the law department. That is all the information I have.
I can speak to that issue. So at the last meeting, we discussed sending out both offer letters and the appraisals. I brought that to Denisha Turner's attention. She in turn talked to Shear Gardner. Shear Gardner, in the process of preparing these appraisals and offer letters, determined that there was a few appraisals that were completely out of line with the other appraisals. And therefore, the offer letters did not go out due to the fact that there would be an issue with sending out offer letters for some properties and not others. And that's where it's at.
Well, how about this? For those where there's an issue with the offer letters, can you all just choose to pick the appraisal that has the higher price, the higher offer, and move forward? Then everybody can get their letters ASAP.
It's that a few of the appraisals that were prepared by Mr. Baker were grossly out of proportion with the other appraisals.
Well, I mean, that's Mr. Baker.
And I'm not talking about Jimmy Thorne's appraisal. I'm talking about the appraisals that were submitted by Mr. Baker.
Well, have you talked to him about that?
I haven't talked to him. I assume that Share Garner's and it's Share Garner's contractor, and they must be talking to him.
Vice President Moreno, if I can just interject really quickly. I want to go on record as saying, and Mr. Montano, I would really like you to listen so closely. JP Morrell, President of the City Council, please listen so carefully. This right here is where the problems come in each and every time. And this is why we ask every time, Mr. Montano, for you to be present at these meetings so that you can see that we're not just out here in these streets sounding the alarm just for no reason. The very first time, Mr. Corwin was ever so graceful when he came into the meeting last time. He said, what was the truth? He said, the appraisals were generated for you all, shouldn't be a problem, given the appraisals and the offer letters. Vice President Moreno requested a draft offer letter compared to the sample offer letter, and nothing about them is different. So when we hear things like Share Garner, hired by you all City of New Orleans, works for you, is talking about a couple of them are grossly out of proportion. What that means to us is you see dollar amounts that you don't think that are deserving, and that's a problem. And I want to say, one of the things that you indicated as well, which was appropriate, I always have to give and name a thing when truth is truth, is you said in one of your, in the past meetings, you don't see this as a process about cheating the residents. You don't see this as a process about trying to save money because the money's already there, it's already allocated. If $35 million is sitting in the bank and has been sitting there since the summer of 2020, we don't understand why out of 67 properties, and it's not even, you're not even talking about all of them, you're talking about a couple of them are grossly out of proportion. You know what was grossly out of proportion? Because we can go there, we can talk about what's grossly out of proportion.
I don't want to interrupt, but I am curious on the process since we have you here available to speak. What is the next stages? Like, how does this get reconciled, or what is the next plan to mitigate, evaluate, whatever?
Mr. Montano, let me interrupt you there. Here's what I want. I want a copy of all these gross out of proportion appraisals. I want Share Garner's analysis. I'm going to look at them as a lawyer because from my position, Share Garner is offering an opinion. We are the client. They don't get to make the decision. We make the decision. The city attorney works for the city council and for the administration. So I want a copy of all the properties that are disproportionately gross, have an issue, and I want the city attorney's office's analysis and Share Garner's, and then the council's just going to make a decision, and then we're going to tell you and Share Garner what that decision is.
We want to go on record as saying, President JP Morrell, in the last meeting, the residents of Gordon Plaza were very adamant that they wanted a copy of both their appraisal and their offer letter. When the sample appraisal and offer letter was provided to Ms. Sheena, it was provided very, very quickly. Once the appraisal was done, they wasted no time getting it out. As a matter of fact, before Ms. Sheena even got her mail, it was already emailed. It was already out here quick, fast, in a hurry. And so we don't in any way, shape, or form believe that there should be any delay. I want to also say, before we leave this place, it seems only appropriate for the residents in terms of even trusting this process that you provide a copy of one of the appraisals and one of the offer letters today before we leave this place. We want to see that they exist, and we would like to have one. And Ms. Sheena was the person who the offer letter and the appraisal was provided for the sample. So we would like hers today. We understand another meeting starts in 10 minutes and it's just a matter of print. And because she is the property owner, she gives her permission. So we would like to see it now. So they're saying that the people, they're here now. They want them now.
I do not have a copy of Miss Sheena's appraisal.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
I do not have a copy of the appraisal with me.
Well, we want you to get them.
All right, so a couple things real quick. So first, Corwin, go work with Denisha and figure out how we're gonna get copies of these appraisals and over to the residents. Number two, I'm not a lawyer. I'm so blessed to have my friend here, JP Morrell, who is an attorney, but as a non-lawyer, the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to contact Pierre Walker. Remember Pierre? He is the attorney for Mr. Baker. So I'm in the process of emailing him right now. I want to let Mr. Walker know that there's some supposed issues with a couple of them. And I'd like to figure out if there's a way that I can personally talk to Mr. Baker, because I don't know if I necessarily trust the assessment coming from Cher Gardner. And so I would like to speak with him myself so that I can understand. And as we know, not all properties are the same. They're not. And so, they may be a perfectly great legitimate reason why there are some who are getting a much higher amount, and why those may look like outliers because of the price, but they certainly may not be because of what the properties actually have within them. So with that being said, those are my next steps. I'm happy to reach out to Denisha. Corwin, please get with her as well and see what we can do to get, you said at least one copy, Angela?
Well, right now, there's no reason why they can't provide them all. We
Yeah.
need them.
Yep. So work on that. And we need to get them something by today.
Yes.
And we've got community development coming up, so we'll be here.
Yes, we
well.
need the appraisal and the offer letter. And we're indicating that we know we still have 8 more minutes of this meeting, and we still have a few more things we need to name. Vice President Moreno,
Yes.
I just want to name that I don't want what has just got discussed here to get inappropriately communicated beyond this space, because this is not a question about problems with appraisals. This is an issue of people having a personal opinion that they are considering to be grossly out of proportion. Proportion is so subjective. And if we're talking about things being grossly out of proportion, the fact that it is March 27th, 2023, and we're still talking about this when money is sitting in the bank collecting interest, that is grossly out of proportion. And so we just want to be real clear that when people are talking about this, that they're naming a thing and calling a thing a thing. So we need an appraisal and an offer letter in hand before we leave this space. And we also need to name this next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting, which we need to happen ASAP, because when everybody has had a chance to review their materials, if they have questions that can lead us a little closer to Mr. Brent, then that would be awesome. I also want to just name too, and I don't know how this fell through the crack, but today's Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting was never listed on the official city website. Okay, I appreciate that, Andrew. So this next one, we'd like it to be noted. So can we look at our calendar?
Let's look at the calendar, please. Give me some dates, Angela. Andrew, you've got the council calendar up. Thank you.
Can we have it this Thursday?
I am out of town from Wednesday night till Friday.
Looks like we've got. Oh, yeah, that's right. The third. What day?
What about Monday?
The third?
The third.
The whole day? We could probably do it in the afternoon.
On the third,
Yeah, but it would
4
have,
o'clock.
it would have to be later because BZA is supposed to have it all day.
If we could do 4, it's better for residents.
You can't do 4. Councilmember Morrell can't be here.
We have a few residents that can't come until after. Hold on.
Can you do 4? Mr. Montano and I can do 4 o'clock on Monday. And
Preferred, yes.
Councilmember Morel will do his best to be.
Yes, thank you, Council President Morel. We need your focus and attention as much as possible as we get this across this finish line, please, and thank you. This meeting for April 3rd, which is Monday,
Mhm.
I just want to emphasize again that in the past, there have been these 30-day deadlines that have been put on these, and we understand that there have to be a cutoff time. The residents are not trying to go through this forever, but we don't want a 30-day deadline that started before these offer letters have even been seen by people. So we don't understand why it would need to start anytime in this month. We don't understand that. We need the appraisals and the offer letters today.
You heard that, Corwin?
I did hear it. As the council knows, the law department has to sign off on form and legality. And so to the extent that there's a problem potentially with the fair market value of these properties, the law department potentially has to alert that to you, let you guys know that.
Well, it seems like from my perspective, the law department didn't have a problem. Sheriff Gardner had a problem, and Sheriff Gardner advised the law department that there was an issue. If we are so quick to hire outside law firms to give opinions, the council's happy to hire a law firm to get a second opinion. Because it seems like every obstacle we have dealing with Gordon Plaza comes back to Sheriff Gardner's opinion on some crucial thing that grinds this entire thing to a halt.
Well, I think really the problem with, as far as sending out, it's not the issue, I don't think, is sending out a copy of the appraisal. It's sending out an offer letter.
We need both.
And that's where the problem lies. And that's where I believe Sheriff Gardner said to hold off on it, because there was a few appraisals, as I mentioned, that were outliers. And if we were going to send out offer letters to some, but not all residents, that would not be fair.
But Corwin, what was Sheriff Gardner and the law department's timeline for resolving the outliers?
I understand that they're doing it right now.
Okay, well,
Council President, when we came to the last meeting, we have no evidence that anybody from the city of New Orleans would have even mentioned the fact that the appraisals have been received on March 15th. Sir, it is March 27th. They were received on March 15th. When Ms. Sheena got her sample appraisal and offer letter, it was sent with a quickness. So now the 15th, all the way to the 27th, and Corwin just been thrown in the fire because he sat right here at the last meeting and said that we could just get him, it wouldn't be a problem. There's no logistical concern here. There are people who are making decisions about amounts of money that they do not believe Black people deserve. And so I just want to say, we're not interested. I want to name this. And I understand, and I want to ask for forgiveness to the people who are waiting for the next meeting. Just give us a minute. We just want to name that we're not interested in having a whole bunch of people going back and forth arguing over this, because people have debated this out for an entire year, JP Morrell, talking about methodologies and all those things. Chris Baker is very clear about fair market value and all those other methodologies. He understands that this entire process is under great scrutiny. And clearly it's not a problem with the methodology. If it's just a few that are considered outliers, all the rest would be just fine. It's a few people, whatever that means, and I don't know what a few means, of people that you don't think that they deserve that amount. And we need all of them, both the appraisals and the offer letters, because it cannot start until the process can't start without those offer letters. We're here now.
and Angela, to your point, and I think Council Vice President Moreno will find out shortly, if there was a legitimate concern that there were some outlier appraisals, the appraisals have been there since March 15th. If we're here today and Chris Baker hasn't been contacted about outlier appraisals, that's a giant red flag.
Exactly.
Because if there was a determination by a legal consultant that there was an issue, why hasn't he been called yet to try and explain the issue?
Because there's not a problem. You guys hire people
Well, Angela, clarify.
listen.
People.
But JP Morrell, let me just say this from the utmost respect for the residents of Gordon Plaza. Let me just name this. The problem, and we got to nip this right now, is that when one person in the city of New Orleans drops the ball, people say, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. We're saying the impact is still the same. No matter who the fuck dropped the ball, no matter who the fuck decided we want to do something or not do something, we're saying it all is in the hands of the city of New Orleans. So we've asked for people to all be in this room together so we don't have to keep going like this. And after a year of battling this out about methodologies and doing the right thing and appraisals and all that stuff, dotting the I's and crossing the T's with state law, we've done all those things.
Oh, there he is.
The appraisals are, I've just got word from Denisha just now. The appraisals will go out today.
Stop, but no.
Wait,
No.
hang on. I got this. Well, if they're gonna go out today, why don't you just give them to them today since they're here?
I'll see if I can go upstairs and get something
Okay.
printed off. I'm gonna need a list of people who are
Okay.
here who I can give.
All right.
They already have it.
Okay, so let's do this, Angela. Let's get you with Corbin.
No.
There's the list right
No.
there.
No. If we can just pause for a second, I want to just name this because see, this is how the smoke and mirrors get thrown. I'm gonna just name this really quickly. And again, I know some of y'all waiting for the next meeting, but stop. Here's the thing. While everybody is in this room, on March 20th, Andrew took initiative, sent out communication, everybody say, what's needed? We sent back a response the very next day indicating all of the residents who had already said, send me my appraisal and offer letter. There were a handful that we listed out that either traveling, wasn't responsive or whatever. And we said, based on them having their own opportunity, that's in the email. The names, the properties are listed. They've had that since the last Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. So here we are again. Every time somebody asks for something, 9 times out of 10, somebody got the shit already. I want to say this final thing. You guys never have a problem finding people and sending shit to their house when it's time to pay the tax bill. It gets exactly to where it's supposed to go. Behind every bush and every pitfall, the tax bill always makes it to the person's house. I also want to say, Chair Garner did not ask for anybody's permission to send out their original letter. So they've been sending people letters. Send them the appraisal letter and the offer letter. We want it now. You can print it out now.
And may I state, and I hate to go here because I keep having to do this. Chair Garner, day one, sent an attorney that was totally racist from day one, from the time she sat down at the table. And that's what this is all about. I hate to bring it up. I really do. But that's what this is all about. A Black community, and you continue to tell us things that's so irrelevant and doesn't necessarily would apply to anybody else. I am sick and tired of it. I want my appraisal letter today from Chris Baker, and I want an offer letter also. I don't want no adjustments whatsoever.
Who, Mr. Montano, JP Morrell, who, Helena Moreno, which one of y'all can call upstairs to Denisha Turner so that we can turn this around right now? We need.
I would say Mr. Montano might have better luck. I've texted her. I didn't receive a response.
Listen, we need it now.
You know how many?
What's the
We can print out the appraisals of the residents who are here and
All right,
provide
let's
them.
do it.
Here's the thing. Yes, and understand this. We need offer letters because none of this process goes forward. We're not sitting on appraisals so that you could come back 3 months later talking about we still thinking about an offer letter. CAO Montano, we need offer letters. The offer letters have already been written. They've already been generated. You all have to drop a number and a name on it. When the sample appraisal was generated, they looked at the appraisal and they dropped the same number on over to the offer letter. So unless y'all trying to cheat Black people, that's what they should be doing upstairs right now.
If I can get a list of the names of the people that are.
You
here.
have a list.
No, ma'am, I do not. I have to hand the appraisal to the person whose appraisal it is.
Yeah.
I can't just hand you a stack of appraisals.
Yep.
And have you distribute them.
Got it. Okay, so you're gonna print out, Angela. So here's guys, listen. Okay, so the law department is going to print out the appraisals for the people who are here. Those who are not here will then have theirs emailed to them. Okay? Does that work, Corwin?
I don't see why that would be a problem.
Okay, great. All right. So let's go get those printed. You
Okay,
all.
I want to just repeat again.
Sure.
The people who are physically in the room are not planning to leave the room until they get these. The people who are not in the room will be looking for timestamp that theirs are being sent in the mail today.
What if we email them too, though? I think that so they can get them today too.
That's-
All right, let's email them too, and then they can mail them as
We'll
well.
ask for both. We want
Perfect.
both.
That's fine. All right, so you all are more than willing, more than welcome, of course, to wait here. And Corwin will get the list of all the people who are present, and get you the appraisals.
I'm gonna need the name and the address.
Name and address. Got it. Okay.
Hey, Angela, like we've got, I sent out this morning, the
Can you repeat that?
I just want to make sure that you got those copies I sent out this morning of the
This morning,
operating
yes.
agreement and the CA for rental assistance.
Yes. And so when we leave here, we'll report back any feedback that we need for those.
All right, so you guys are filling out the list of who's here along with their addresses. Corwin's gonna go upstairs, print them out. Like I said, more than welcome to sit here in the chamber, with us. And, our next Gordon Plaza meeting will be 4 PM on the 3rd. Everyone got that? 4 PM on the 3rd. Okay, 4 PM on the 3rd.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Thank you all.
How quickly are these coming down? I don't know what a minute means because last time we said a minute, that was 8 hours.
Yep. Thank you, Brent. Appreciate your time.
We will be waiting here, yes. No, some of them are gonna go upstairs with him. Miss Shannon, can you go upstairs with him, please? Because we don't need anybody on a coffee break.